So I'd like to call this Operations Planning Committee meeting to order on Wednesday, April 6th. It's 9:05 a.m. And I'm going to hold off on approving the prior meeting minutes. Next item on the agenda is reports. My report since we last met. So our last meeting was on March 9th. Since then, we did have, last week we had a COVID After Action Committee meeting with the staff. And this was to take a look at what's happened in all the different departments over the last couple of years and come up with a best practice for going forward with the town. And I think we uncovered some things. I wasn't here for the very, very, very vast majority of the pandemic, but I think that we learned a lot of things and will help us just, I don't know, you can't plan for something like that, but you can learn what worked and what didn't work. And so I was very, very happy to do that. Update on Eversource and Little Brook. Mediation continues between the town and Eversource. Last week we had a virtual meeting with the residents of Little Brook and Little Brook North and discussed the status of the mediation and what the likely possible outcomes were. We then had an opportunity to meet with the mediator alone, and that was I think that was very, very helpful. We expressed our strong objection to clear cutting, as has been done in other towns. We also expressed our belief that we not only want to retain trees, but we want to have a vigorous planting and maintenance plan offered, and we are looking for an okay from DOT for some vegetation planting on their properties. The mediator is next going to meet with Eversource, and we expect to hear back from them shortly. You've all heard me speak about Great Island. It's not only does it have a unique history, it's also the last best property for sale, I think, on the East Coast, maybe in all of America. It is a very special, special piece. There will never be an opportunity for our town to control this property again, and I think it would be a benefit for not only the people that live here today, but for the generations to come to enjoy this. Our plan of conservation states that Darien will seek to acquire land for open space whenever possible. However, with 97% already spoken for, the opportunities to acquire open space in the future may be limited. The plan also goes on to state that we have the right of first refusal in the event of any sales on the golf courses. The plan also states it is incumbent on the town to be prepared for such an offering and prepared to respond in a timely manner. And that is what I am working on right now. Our town is dedicated to acquiring open space, and over the last 25 years, we've acquired 22.78 acres. But if you subtract out Highland Farms of 16.3 acres, we've really purchased over the last 25 years just shy of 6.5 acres. This is a 60.9 acre parcel. Acquiring open space, I don't think it's been for lack of interest on our citizens, our residents' part. I think it's really been lack of supply. And I look at this parcel and I see achieving our open space plans with this for many, many years to come. This should satiate that. So a lot of people moving to Darien, a lot of excitement with the developments. I would like to add this as one more great reason to love our town. Rehabilitation of the bridge. You've probably heard of this. DOT held a meeting on March 9th, later in the day after our last OPC meeting, and they are discussed the stormwater runoff under 95 in Darien, and construction is expected to begin in 2025. The state will be covering the cost of this project. It's expected to be $1.8 million at this time. The Norotan Avenue and West Avenue intersection improvement which has been in the works for years. We have accepted the lowest bidder, responsible lowest bidder during construction, and that also is being funded with a LATSIP grant, and that is in the works right now. Let's see. We have a town newsletter. I encourage you, if you aren't already a subscriber to it, let me know. Or you can go on the website and you can hit the links and sign up there. Marley Hayes is our media director and is working on that, and always welcomes input from specifically you people. I attended a Women in Leadership event on March 15th, and I attended also the NAIOP panel discussion that was led by David Corris on March 21st. This is Connecticut and Suburban New York Chapter Commercial Real Estate Development. This was the 4th annual panel discussion that they've had, and it featured mayors and First Selectman of Fairfield County, including Mayor Carolyn Simmons from Stamford, First Selectman Fred Camillo from Greenwich, Mayor Harry Rilling from Norwalk, and myself. I can share that people were very interested in hearing about the developments in town, especially the 3 major ones, Federal, Palmer's, and Corbin. On March 29th, I gave a updated state of the town to the Chamber of Commerce, well-attended event over at Maplewood. Terrific to see Seth.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. A lot of people, a lot of interest, and a lot of interest in developments, which is, I shared a lot of what I had spoken about at the panel. And on March 20th, a fundraiser for the Depot and the Human Services Department was held over at Wheat Beach with a polar plunge. And I've never, this was for kids, I've never been happier to age out of an event. I did not run into the water, but it was terrific to see the support from all of the participants, and I will continue to be a bystander at that event. That's my report. Jeremy, you want to go?
Sure. As you referenced, planning and zoning is quite busy with a lot of these projects as they come back to the commission. Last night they spent a lot of time with David Genovese talking about the Corbin District project. David, a lot of his tenants are starting to come to his fruition, and he's getting the construction plans. You see that phase 1 is moving right along. That north side of Corbin will be done, we think, by December or January, and then he will start on the south side of Corbin. He's going to start announcing more and more tenants for phase 2. He referenced a lot of restaurants, many restaurants in phase 2, some office space, the residential units, of course. So the commission spent well over an hour with David last night talking about his plans now that things are becoming more in focus. The commission also last night approved the Goddard School, which is one of the anchor tenants for the Norotan Heights Shopping Center project. They will be occupying the space at the corner of Heights Road and Hollow Tree. And as Mr. Olvani mentioned, that project comes with a number of traffic and road improvements for that area, including a widening of Heights Road. So right now it's 1 lane wide. It will soon be 2 lanes wide at Hollow Tree and Heights, which should help traffic flow.
That's an issue, yep.
Yeah. And what we try to do for lots of these projects is, while the development comes in, there's associated traffic improvements to make things better and offset the increase in traffic.
Jeremy, when we're just, sorry to interrupt you, but when in the process, when does that the traffic be?
It would have to be done before they open.
It is. So it's the initial part of the project.
Well, I don't know. Initial. It's going to take about 1.5 years to build those things, maybe 2.
But that's in stage 1.
It will happen before those buildings get any traffic.
Okay.
So is it going to 2-lane road? I mean, going from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane?
2 to 3.
2 to 3. Okay,
Right.
so there's going to, okay.
Right.
And where is the 3rd lane?
It's going to be going towards facing Stamford.
Okay.
It's a left, basically a left turn lane
And a right turn
being
lane.
added to Heights as it intersects
Correct.
Hollow Tree Ridge.
That's correct.
Okay.
So while there was a number of concern from members of the public, the commission did hire an outside traffic expert at the applicant's expense to double check their traffic expert's work. And it was seen as, yes, this will make things not worse than they are. You may recall, people.
They ain't great now.
Well, people forget, they've had back-out parking into Heights Road for 73 years. So you remember in the old days, people would go to Donut Inn, and the first thing you do is you back out into traffic. The commission has been very adamant about getting rid of those things, and we used to have them at, and I don't want to date myself, remember over here? The
You
appliance
can't date
place?
yourself, Jeremy,
The
you're
appliance
safe.
place, Seth, you remember
Right.
people backing into the post road?
Oh, yeah.
Where else is that? And the commission has been phasing that out over and over. That is super dangerous. There's still a few places in town. David Genovese will be getting rid of some of that along the post road,
Huh.
right? I dare you to drive into the Lego store and try to back out without paying attention.
Oh,
No,
absolutely.
no, thanks.
Yeah, so this will make things much safer than they are. It's the proper way to do it.
And how far are they sinking? They're doing light work too, right? Signal work?
New traffic signals, some other improvements, crosswalks, et cetera. So
Okay,
overall, traffic will flow, I think, better.
okay.
But again, people forget that, this used to be a thriving shopping center, right? Fabricare, Heights Pizza, Darien Donut.
Yep.
Etc. So
Liquor store.
liquor store.
A
So
lot of in and out.
a lot of
Yeah.
people quickly in and out.
Visits,
I'm just
right.
running in, leave the car running, back into. So
Right.
from that standpoint, the commission did a thorough review, and they did. I think the vote was unanimous last night on that. The Montessori school, which is going in next to Taste of Italy, the commission did vote to change the zoning, but they did not vote yet on the Montessori school. That vote is scheduled for the 19th. There was a lot of concern about traffic, and they're still hashing through that as a commission. They want to make sure it will work. The other thing the commission discussed last night was the state-required affordable housing plan. This was the third or fourth meeting they've had. Draft chapters have been posted to the web. We've also posted a link for people to send emails to the commission to comment on the plan. But everything is being very transparent. As the commission drafts materials, it gets posted to the website, darien.ct.gov/AH plan, for people to read through and comment or come to an upcoming meeting. They'll be next discussing it in probably early May. And the last thing,
Does that, can I ask a
Sure.
question? How does this fit in with, I don't know whether it's pending legislation or it's continuing discussion of transit-oriented development?
well, I can certainly speak to that, Seth, because I did speak to one of the reporters. The bill, in 2017, a bill was passed requiring all communities in the state, 169 communities, to do a plan by June of 2022. It gave everyone 5 years, no matter where you were with your other town plans and other required state work. So they gave everyone 5 years. Then last year, as part of Public Act 21-29, the bill that was passed, very comprehensive, they gave everyone one less month to do the work. Nobody knows why, but this is, so as part of Public Act 21-29, they also require communities to deal with minimum apartment sizes, deal with parking requirements for multifamily housing, deal with accessory dwelling units. And the bill this year, which didn't pass, was now they want communities, while you're doing the state-required plan, and you're dealing with the parking requirements, and you're dealing with minimum apartment size, and you're dealing with accessory dwelling units, they then did a bill this year, we now want you to automatically rezone all the property near train stations. We're like, wait a minute, we're back here at step 1. We did step 2, step 3, we're working on step 4, and now you're coming at it with step 5. That bill did not pass, thank goodness. So the commission is still trying to get all that other work done. And it's not only Darien, it's 168 other communities are trying to get their plans done. Only 18 out of 169 have theirs done so far. 151 have not finished their plan.
Not surprising.
Right, not
Man,
surprising.
it's not a lightweight request.
Right, and most of them have not finished the other stuff either. But the legislature is being lobbied so hard that towns need to do this, towns need to do this, that commissions are, as we were saying, meeting quite frequently, 3 or 4 times a month, to try to get all this work done. So thankfully, that didn't pass. because we're still working on the other items. As I mentioned, and what we've said in this draft affordable housing plan, Darien is a model for other communities. And I dare say, for anything other than a big city, we're one of the tops in the state in terms of making progress on the ground. And everyone in this town sees the cranes in downtown, sees the cranes in Norotan Heights, sees John Vaccaro's project, the corner post in Dickinson. We're actually found ways to create housing diversity, multifamily housing. We have the developmentally disabled housing in East Lane that was done. We have Allen O'Neill, which was redeveloped into the Heights. We have Old Town Hall, redeveloped into the Royal. We're a success story here. Let us tell our story. Let us proceed with the work we're doing, because we're gaining on it. We've got 2 moratorium. We're only 2 or 3 in the state that have achieved that. We're working towards our 3rd. So the fact that the state keeps coming in and saying, now you need to do this, we're like, wait a minute. Why don't we look at what we're doing, look at the success we've had with what we're doing, and part of the plan is trying to document where we've able to make up ground and have success. What has the commission done to do that?
Right. Now, are any of our representatives in dialogue with you? State senators, state representatives?
Terry Wood was here at, I think, the last OPC meeting. Mr. Alvani may have spoken to some. I can't speak for who Mr. Alvani may or may not have spoken with.
Well, I would just suggest that recognizing where people other than Terry are from, mostly, getting them involved with us would be a critical factor, because, we've got to try and do something to get our arms and hands around this thing. At least do, and these representatives are the ones who are voting up there.
It's certainly, the housing lobby appears to be quite strong, and there are many bills, not only the transit-oriented bill, there's others in the legislature that keep kicking around, that keep getting presented, and I think what we're saying is, look, there's other ways to skin the cat, so to speak.
Right.
And please come to Darien and take a look at what we're doing, or read our plan, and we can tell you how we've been able to approve projects, rezone things, change our regulations, inclusionary zoning, affordable housing trust fund. I'm working closely with Federal Realty in the past week. They are starting to rent units. They're putting the finishing touches on the details of their affordable housing. They're going to be writing a check to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. $190,000 going to that fund in Darien for future housing. How did we do that? Most towns don't have that.
No, but those are real important points that we want to be sure get in front of the legislature.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
we're doing
a lot
the
of
job,
innovative
but
things
we got to get
that most
recognized for
communities
it.
aren't even thinking of. We're way ahead of the game in terms of what we're doing, how we have to do it. The other issue which they ignore is, while demand is very great for housing in Fairfield County, housing demand is not so great in, pick a random town.
Oxford?
Yeah.
I fish in all of those towns, and I never went.
Yeah. So again, this one-size-fits-all approach doesn't.
Right.
You got 169 different communities of varying size,
And growth.
housing demand,
And
growth,
growth rates.
water, sewer, certainly something. So
Excuse me, the dollars that go into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, what are those purposed for? What are
those are
to be used for?
to be used for the development of affordable housing. The last time money was put into the fund, David Genovese, about 10 years ago, put in money in lieu of building a unit. It was $360,000. That money was subsequently given to the developers of the Royal at Darien to offset some of their costs for creating 55 units.
It subsidizes developers' building of additional
Right.
affordable
So
units.
David, instead of building one unit,
Yeah.
his money was used to actually help build 55 units.
Right.
A huge win for the town. Much better than one. We got money that helped create, and actually, what's very important to the commission, we can see the result. We see the units that were built as a result of that money, and that was super important. So the trust fund, the people that are on that group, and the Planning and Zoning Commission. We're not giving money for someone to draw up a plan or draw a picture. We're doing to see the unit. We want these units constructed. Very important.
Well, it's planned, it's organized,
Yeah.
you know, which is a big difference between that and, well, we're just going to take a piece of land and say, do it, you
Right.
know?
So-
This is, it's a big difference.
So a lot of success here, and
All right.
the Commission's very proud of what we've accomplished. And I know Steve's given you a number of charts and graphs and maps saying, look, this is the progress we've made in the past 20 years. I dare anyone to say, from a town of our size, that they've done more. I would refuse to believe anyone's done more.
Absolutely.
But the key thing is, we get in front of whoever's leading the charge up there in Hartford and get what we're doing in front of them, so they understand that, hey, we're leading it here.
Yeah.
We're not following, and we're doing the job. You know, give us a little elbow room.
Yeah, let us do our thing.
Right.
And we can show that, hey, we don't need the laws changing. We're making progress with certain changes we're making here on our own, and we're getting success.
And some of are in excess of the state. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
our-
way.
You know, our exclusionary zoning is 14% versus 10% for the state.
Yeah.
We start at 4 units versus what the state starts at 10 units?
Yeah, there was, in that bill, it was, some of these, the problem is when you do a one-size-fits-all bill,
Right.
the fact that we're stricter, we're like, wait a minute, now you're making it less of a requirement for housing. We're like, well, that doesn't help us.
Right. But
We have a
that's-
more strict
Right.
law
Right.
in terms of the affordable component. So what you're doing is, you're actually hurting the town of Darien. We're trying to get more affordable housing built, and if your bill passes, we will actually get less built. How is that helping us?
Right.
So,
that's
when they
where
write
the-
one rule that covers 169
Exactly. Right.
communities, you're saying some communities that are stricter, you're making it looser. So, thank goodness that one bill didn't pass. We still have to circle back and say to them, here's the problem when you make a one-size-fits-all bill. The communities that are ahead of the game get hurt.
We started this, I think, when I was on the Board of Selectmen in 2009. It's been going on
Nonstop.
continuous. Ugh. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
a lot of our time and effort spent not only responding to all, but trying to stay ahead of it in terms of speaking to the legislation, working with other communities and other planning and zoning chairmen, which I know Steve's talked about, to try to get word out that, look, some of these things might make sense. Why don't you give communities the options? Pick out the tool that's right for them, you know, whether it's inclusionary zoning, parking requirements, whatever it is, and let them choose, because it differs community to community.
Huh.
So, the last thing I wanted to quickly mention, because we could talk about housing for days and days.
No, I didn't mean to get.
No, it's okay.
But
Get me all fired up.
it's sitting right there, and I could see we're revved.
Yeah. Is the referral on purchase of property. The next step is Board of Selectmen, goes to Board of Finance, and then to the RTM. Planning and Zoning has to issue a report before it goes to the RTM. The Commission did mention that last night, so I'll work directly with Kate on the timing of that report, because the Commission only gets 35 days from the date it ends up in our office to issue their report. So I'll work with Kate on the timing in anticipation of the RTM meeting, whenever that might be. Is there an expected date at this point?
You know, what's the timing from a seller? The seller seems to be the one putting the heat on here as far as timing, just offhand.
I'll work with Kate.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
We're in negotiations.
Great.
Okay. Yeah.
That's all. Thank you.
Thanks for that heads up, though, on the timing. Dan?
Yes, last night, the Board of Finance unanimously approved a budget. That budget calls for a 2.3% increase in the mill rate from 16.84 to 17.23. We were able to do that by without reducing the operating budgets or the capital budgets from either of the boards, the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Education budget. And the reason we were able to do that is the boards are projecting a combined $3.4 million surplus in this year's budget. We're going to use $2.9 million of that surplus and another $100,000 from our capital reserve. To that combined $3 million, we will use to lessen the tax burden and therefore apply those $3 million to next year's budget, and that lessens the tax burden on the community, and that's how we got to a 2.3% proposed increase. Of course, this remains subject to RTM approval. So that concluded our budget work for the season. The only other things to report are last night we unanimously passed the transfers with respect to Chief Anderson and his maintenance and HVAC issues. That's really it.
Dan, so can you explain to me the fire apparatus?
Yes.
And how you're doing that? You're appropriating it mid-year?
Yeah, so bonding projects don't necessarily need to be part of the budget, right? Because we can fund them outside of the budget through bonding. So the fire apparatus, each of the different 3 proposed vehicles to be acquired are in kind of different stages of their process. And it's a complicated process. One thing they need before they can actually negotiate with a vendor the entire specs that generates 150-page specs is they need authorization to spend, because the vendor's not going to spend the time with the town to do that unless there's an authorization. So what we would do is we would pass a resolution authorizing bonding, and then when the vehicles, and then we have all the time in the world basically to issue those bonds. Those vehicles don't need to be paid for until the time of delivery. I think there's occasionally the mention of a deposit, but that's kind of, I think, to be negotiated, and generally is not the case. So you wouldn't actually have to have the money until the vehicles are delivered, and we could actually issue bonds before or after that to fund those purchases. So the fire departments need the resolution passed before they can enter into that final stage of spec negotiation or discussion. So we will be taking that up over the course of the next couple of months of issuing that resolution to give them that green light.
Okay, so you can take delivery without writing a check right then? You could do the
No, the
bond-
town would have to pay for the vehicle
Okay.
upon delivery.
But we would issue the bonds, we could
Issue the
them.
bonds. My understanding is the bonds don't necessarily, as long as we have a resolution to issue the bonds, so the Board of Finances authorized the issuance of bonds, the bonds can be issued prior or subsequent to the actual payment. We would fund them from a reserve and then reimburse that reserve when we issue the bonds.
Okay, so that was an interesting comment you had about the capital projects, like something like this, a bonding project. You don't see it as part of the budget?
Well, it's not necessarily, so we can only pass a budget, right, during budget season. And we have a calendar that's imposed upon the town as to when all that can happen.
Right.
We have no such restriction as to when we can issue a bond, right, to fund some other project, whether it's the Oxridge School project, the HHR school project, or fire apparatus. So some items that pop up that turn out to be bondable pop up as a part of the budget process. Paving, the school track, other things like that. They come up every year, and we lump them into a bucket to be bonded, and that is a natural result of the budget process. Other lumpier capital projects, like fire apparatus don't need to be part of the budget process. As a matter of fact, the fire departments would prefer they not be part of the budget process, because they have to basically put a square peg into a round hole, because they're trying to work on their fire apparatus on a timetable imposed by the budget cycle rather than imposed by when they actually need the vehicle or when they're ready to move forward with the vehicle. So on larger capital projects, just like HHR, we're going to be doing bonding work independent of the budget season. So
I see where you're going. I see what you're saying, but I feel like, we used to reserve for these,
Right.
this apparatus, and now we don't, right?
Right.
And that's been a couple of years. And now we're moving away from even including it in a budget discussion. And I think if it is, HHR is a one-off, Oxbridge is a one-off, but they have a capital equipment kind of schedule. So I'm interested in how taking this out of the budget thought stream, how that will benefit the town.
Well, certainly we have to consider as part of the budget the debt service that any bonds we were to issue in the forthcoming year would require. So we may not be able to schedule that, but I think we have to subjectively consider that when we are recommending a budget.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Because, yes, you're right, the apparatus, while not as frequent as paving, are definitely more frequent, and there's a schedule, unlike the school projects.
Right.
Isn't it possible that the bonding actually would lower the impact of these big capital items on the budget?
Well, that's why we moved to that.
Yeah.
That's why we moved to that in the last couple of years, rather than reserving for it.
Yeah, it was in my shift that we started reserving. We won't get into when that was, but it was it wasn't recent.
Gold, were we on the gold standard?
I know we had just dumped that. Reagan had just said that. Anyway, but this seems to me a better way to approach it.
The difference is when you bond something, you're paying for something over the life of the bond. So if you think about a 20-year bond, the residents in town that are living here for the next 20 years are paying for that, and that's the life cycle of the apparatus that you're buying. When you're reserving every year, you're basically taxing people for something that you're going to buy in the future, and they may or may not be there to actually benefit from the acquisition of that vehicle.
Right. No, I understand the concept behind why we did what we did. Anything else?
Nope, that's
No?
it.
Okay. Thanks for all your work. Thanks for all of the work the Board of Finance did on the budget. It's very transparent and I think educational process for everybody. So
Thank you. I'll pass that along to my
Please.
colleagues.
Is that-
Yes, well, I met Jack Davis the other day in passing, and he looked bleary-eyed and looked like he'd definitely. So he seems to be smiling, so that's always a good thing.
Well, he has a meeting tonight.
Yes.
We'll see how.
We'll see how
Hopefully
that.
smiling after it.
Yes, it's not just Jack gets a lot of credit, but it's not necessarily all him either on that committee.
They have a great team.
They do a great job, and they work very hard. The animal in the room is the Great Island. I'm reading the front page of the Stanford Advocate this morning, and I see there's $100 million just kind of sitting there. And so that's going to come through the RTM. And they're just two basic things. First of all, how this thing's going to get funded. And that has ripple effects everywhere. It has ripple effects on the budget, and it has ripple effects on our credit rating. And so a pretty good and careful discussion of how that's going to happen is going to be very important. And then the other thing is the plan. There's got to be some sort of outline of, well, okay, we got the property. That means there's go-forward expenses to be able to set it up in such a way that the town gets good use out of it. And I think that will be another critical part of it. And I don't know what the seller is thinking on time to get all this done, but it's not something you can just, do real quickly. So.
Well, Seth, a lot of the numbers we've accumulated, right? So there, you know, there are many parts to this. This is a very big
Oh,
ticket item,
yes, yes.
right? But the moving parts they're identifiable, and we have identified them. We are working on what the possibilities for the property would be. I think that people will want to know, what are we thinking about? I don't look at this project as something that has to be, mapped out today. I think it'll be a process where we will invite the public's input. And I see that happening in a few different ways, but I don't want to get the cart before the horse. So
No, I'm just saying, when it gets on the floor of the RTM,
before it gets to the floor, we will have all of these questions answered to the very best of our ability.
it is imperfect, I am,
Yeah. It's not my first rodeo for getting something through.
No.
I have a feeling that we have a good idea of the questions and concerns the RTM will have, and we will do everything we can to address them. Absolutely. Rest assured on that.
It's gonna be interesting, that's for sure.
It is interesting already.
Okay, I want to put that on the table.
Please,
'cause,
thank you. You speak for that group, so thank you.
So, getting on to the mundane things of just what's going on.
Nothing is mundane.
What's going on in town. We were able in our last meeting to appoint a person to the Blight Review Board. That took us a while to do, but it's the little things in life sometimes, so we're pleased. Ed Wysheka was nice enough to stand up, and then approved the appropriation for $6.4 million for the ARPA funding. And so that can continue and get done. You can't go out and do anything until the RTM, the way the rules are set up, until the RTM gives an overall approval to the numbers. So we did that,
What meeting was that?
The March 31 meeting of the RTM.
So is ARPA plus 10 days?
I think, yeah. That's
Yeah.
why I'm trying to.
Anyway. So that's sort of history. Going forward, and also there's just some continuing things. We are working on Appendix B, Rules of Procedure of the RTM, to have the descriptions of what the committee is supposed to do match what they really do.
That's a great.
So that's rolling along. And de-gentrification, we're still looking for a better word than that, but for the time being, we're going with that. And that's fairly far along. We've had the public hearing, and so now we have to wait for public response, and then we're hopeful that in June we can actually pass that.
How many people attended the hearing, do you know?
No,
It was virtual.
7, 8, 9?
Right, it was virtual, right?
Yeah. Well, no, it was
It was live?
we did face-to-face
That was
and
live?
virtual.
Okay.
Yeah. Going forward, there's a couple of things. The Rules Committee has noted that we get a turnover in RTM members every year because of the way the election's set up. A lot of them don't know what FOIA is, don't know what the Robert's Rules of Order are. They just want to get up and say something, you know? And so we're working on a way to perhaps do a recording so that people could go up on the town website and go through a series of topics in Robert's Rules and have somebody live talk about it and how it all works. We'll see nascent stages, but it's there, it's on our mind.
You know, we did something like that for the Board of Selectmen. It wasn't on the website, but Kate did little flash drives with a presentation on it of the different departments and kind of the type of information you're looking for. So are you looking to educate people that are on the RTM, or are you looking to address new members that are brought in mid-calendar?
It's both.
Both.
It would. The cool thing about having it as a recording, perhaps working with Channel 79, is that anybody could go up there at a given point in time and say, I forgot how that works, and look it up. And then also have a reference in there that says if you want more information, page 20 of the 12th edition of Robert's Rules, if you want to try and stay awake for that, you could read that and get more detail. So,
Yeah, I think presenting that is a terrific, great idea.
and same way with FOIA. We're working on a way to do that. Haven't got that exactly figured out, but it's in the works. The other thing is that the Rules Committee authorized me to write our representatives. The state legislature passed an ordinance that specified how public meetings are going to be handled using electronic equipment. And they're particularly geared at an organization like the Representative Town Meeting, which is large and complicated when you start using electronic equipment and voting. Now, we found a way to comply, but we're writing a letter to our representatives to ask them to extend the ability to vote electronically, because in the future, if you wanted to do hybrid meetings, for example, some people on electronically, some people live, face-to-face, you have to have the ability to vote electronically, and if they don't put that in there, then it shuts it off. So we're writing to ask them to extend that capability. What we decide to do from our meetings going forward, that still has to be determined, but at least you'd leave the door open if you wanted to do hybrid, that you could vote electronically. So that's going on. The only other thing coming up, we will vote 3 items for the HHR bonding. We have to, the appropriation and bond authorization so that those can move forward. It's the same as the $6.4 million that we did last time, and all of that comes up on April 4th, the RTM meeting. So that's sort of what's going on.
Is that the blight? What's the term there? Is it 2-year?
Yeah.
It's 2-year, okay. And what's your sense, is your sense for the RTM that they would prefer to still be virtual for their meetings? Or is there?
We haven't.
You don't have a feel?
No. Until we see what the state is going to come up with, it's hard to get a feel for what what we would do.
If I could interrupt, Planning and Zoning met, I forgot to mention, last night for the first time in over 2 years, they met live. All 6 commission members were as happy as could be that they met live, and they felt it was a more efficient meeting. Everyone walked out of that meeting saying, oh, way better. Yes, I had to get dressed. I had to leave my house, but much better. So the other board, EPC's been doing it. Zoning board will have their, appeals will have their first live meeting in over 2 years next week, I believe. So rave reviews. So I would recommend going back to it. I think it would result in a much more efficient meeting. Commission members got to see each other. There was the social aspect. Everyone walked out, big smiles on their faces. So
Yeah, I
I'll leave it
agree
at
with you,
that.
Jeremy. I feel that you might get better attendance if you're just looking at hard numbers on a virtual meeting.
Oh, yeah, we do.
But I think as far as engagement goes,
fully
Um,
engaged commission.
Let me assure you that you have no argument from me.
And
Try to run a meeting using electronic equipment from the moderator standpoint is not easy because you cannot see what's going on.
and these 100 people that volunteer, part of it is they want to be part of a community. And you might get some work done virtually, but it's tough to be part of a community when you're just,
I couldn't agree with you
either-
more.
Part of it is the social, well, you see it before and after the meeting. How you doing? Good to see you.
Right.
And it's that camaraderie that builds with a live meeting.
Right.
It's not just that, it's that conversations that aren't necessarily part of the meeting, but are necessary.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then, people can
You
pick
have
up the
no
phone
argument
and
from
do
me
that,
on this one, but whether I can I can get them moving is something else.
I
I mean, the Rules Committee could be meeting face-to-face now, so.
Yeah. I worry because the art team is so important for the town and it's 100 people. And, we could have a lag where people, they re-up, but then they're not getting the satisfaction that they anticipated from being part of this group. And then all of a sudden, we have 80 people that want to be on the RTM instead of 100. So I would really, I hope that the entire RTM will speak towards what they would like to have happen with that group.
Well, it's coming.
Good.
It's making any kind of decision before the state decides what they're going to do would be a waste of time.
Right, I realize.
They decided to get involved in the local politics, and it's, well, at any rate, they're now in a position. I understand that the committee that is recommending what the next stage will be has completed their work, and they have now, this week, are giving the bill to the representatives, both in the Senate and the House of Representatives, what their thoughts are. And so the writing of this letter to them comes at the right time. I asked the administrative assistant to Bob Duff, I said, am I wasting my time here? Or, is this thing a done deal or what? And he said, no, it's just coming up. The suggestion from the committee is just being presented, so it looks good. I have our distinguished colleague, Mr. Fox, helping me with the content of the letter.
Right.
The idea being that the less work they have to do in Hartford because of what the wording is right. The better.
Well,
So
always good to fine tune that.
Yeah.
The verbiage, but I think if you simultaneously are looking at what your RTM wants. I mean, I'm very protective of our volunteers in town. We run on volunteers, and making it easy for them to participate is important, and providing the environment that they will thrive in is important. So
it's on the table.
thank you. Anything else to discuss, gentlemen?
The only other thing I would, volunteer comment. So as part of our budget process, we toured the firehouses. And while on a piece of paper that we run on a volunteer fire force, when you actually see what they do and meet some of those folks face to face, and you're in their firehouses, and it was really effective. And you could see the equipment firsthand. You could see why it's necessary, and some things that are a little bit obtuse on paper, you actually see what they actually mean. And so that was highly beneficial. And I know some of the RTM members joined the Board of Finance for that. I think we want to extend that practice to some other departments, most notably Parks and Rec, as part of next year's budget cycle, to actually see if there's a piece of paper that says the gazebo needs repair to pick a park. No, let's go see the gazebo, and we might see some other things. And so I think actually you're more engaged with the budget when you're actually seeing what you're funding.
Absolutely.
And I think it was a great thing to do. We've done it with the schools.
Right.
I think it makes a lot of sense to extend it into not every department. Jeremy, we're not going to come and kick the tires from this. But in some of the other things where there's a lot of physical apparatus or structure, it makes a lot of sense.
I think separating that into 2 different days too is something to consider.
Yes. Oh yeah.
That was the schools and then fire. This is a long day.
That was a long day.
Yeah.
Parks and Rec has one in the fall. It'd probably be better to do it in just before budget season, but then you're fighting the weather, and if it's snow covered, then So we're working with Lori and others to figure out what the best time to do that is, because I know the RTM Parks and Rec already participates in that tour in the fall. And it's just a question of if we're going to broaden it, do we need a second day, and when should that day be?
And I think that the fire, you see how well cared for all of this apparatus is too. It's sparkly, clean, ready to go. So my only suggestion would be to think about breaking that into 2 days.
Well, I don't know that we're going to do fire every year.
Okay.
Right? I think this was really, especially this year where we had 3 apparatus on the proposed capital list.
Right. Anything else, John?
And hopefully we'll get a better weather day than
that was yes. That was, but and it was advertised as a difficult day, and yet it was terrific turnout for the tour. So people are very interested.
Yep.
So, if nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting.
Motion to
Motion
adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Channel 79.